I'm John Billingsley, and you are listening to Beyond Track podcast.
What are some thoughts of yours towards the whole, is Star Trek getting too woke?
The idea that a show that exists to push the boundaries in terms of what is acceptable and what it should be like just part of our human condition, which is, everybody on the fucking ship, as long as you're nice. To me, it's like you can't be too woke.
Red alert.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Beyond Trek Podcast. In the room with me, I've got Big J, Renzo, and I'm Dag. And today we're going to talk to you about an embarrassment of dupplers.
I like this episode.
I love the title.
I didn't understand what the title
meant. It's like
meant
a flock of seagulls, an embarrassment
it's
of
the
dupplers.
Collective noun. Yeah, because they're so fragile to being embarrassed, that's like the collective noun.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I got a cramp in my left hand. I'm left-handed, by the way. I got a cramp in my hand writing my notes for this episode.
You're left-handed?
I am.
I did not know that. Okay. One of the strange ones.
The strange ones. Like, we're all strange, aren't we? A little bit.
In our own way, yes.
I mean, we've all got to be a little strange to get into podcasting on Star Trek of all subjects.
Yeah,
right.
and to watch an episode once and go, wow, there's like 60 cups in here that nobody's going to recognize unless they really get it. In addition to that, yesterday, from the time of this recording, was Star Wars Day. Or what? I'm fired. I'm fired.
You're done.
Star Trek Day. I'm gonna bleep that out.
No, leave it. Take your embarrassment.
Shame.
Yeah. No.
Take your shame with dignity.
I will do this. But it was Star Trek Day, and we got several panels, a whole lot of information about Star Trek Prodigy, Strange New Worlds, Picard Season 2, Discovery Season 4. I think those are all the topics that they covered that were new, in addition to a whole lot of really cool feel-good mantras and some celebrity panels, which we'll be talking about after we go through our little episode teardown here. So, Renzo, kick it off.
So, our episode, as we mentioned before, is titled An Embarrassment of Dupplers. And in the first scene, we've got this narration from the Captain Freeman explaining to us what mission she's on and what the Dupplers are and what's going on. So they're having like a nice little dinner. A Duppler is a race that can go through uncontrolled duplication, which they call duplication, when they are in an emotional state that's rough. So they're having this like dinner, and they're being very jovial, very friendly, very fake ass smiles from everybody at the table kind of thing. Even Ta'ana's got like this fake smile on. And the Duppler ambassador, who's voiced by the amazing Richard Kind, who you know from like everything, drops his fork, and then Ransom, to just lighten the moment because it looks like the Duppler ambassador is about to freak out, chucks his own fork. So that's where our episode starts. And it's kind of an interesting setup for it. We've seen many here's the ambassador, we've got to be nice to them kind of setups, but this time it's like it's a Tribble-worthy danger if you're not nice to them.
They're walking on eggshells, and the captain basically
even
said that in her log.
Yep.
Makes me wonder if they're drinking Romulan ale here, because they have these blue flutes on at the place settings.
Ooh, but would you want to give Romulan ale to a race that's prone to duplicating themselves when they're upset?
Well, if the only thing that Romulan ale gives you is a headache, then maybe it'll just like numb them out a little bit, and they'll be less anxious. But the other thing that they mentioned is that they're heading towards Starbase 25, which is a very low number for a starbase, so it's definitely like the core Federation space. For a big Starfleet shindig, essentially. And Captain Freeman is the only captain of a California-class ship invited because of her actions to back up the Titan against the Pakleds.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a bad badge to have. If you're going to have some street cred, there's that. And before we go too far, because you were talking about Commander Ransom and throwing his, fork. I just have to say again, I know I've said this before, why does Jerry O'Connell, who voices Jack Ransom, sound so not like him whatsoever?
Because Ransom doesn't look like him either. It's a different thing.
I get that. They don't look like them, but it's just these actors, you see them, you hear their voices, and then they get into an animated thing. this show, and it just like sounds completely. Well, when John Delancey did Q, reprised Q in that the one episode of Lower Decks, sounded nothing like Q.
Oh, I didn't get that.
So, like, voice acting has, first of all, there's post-production to the voice. And then second of all, they are playing characters. And you've got, a veteran voice actor here, Fred Tatasciore. And he just does all of the voices. Like, he did Drax in the What If thing that came out a couple of weeks ago. They didn't have Dave Bautista voice that. Which the news would like you to think is such a horrible crime. But, Bautista was probably not available for the
Otherwise
moment.
busy.
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like the voices that they're doing is a combination of, hey, here's my gimmicky voice for this role, and also post-production editing and augmenting.
Well, the other thing is, though, if you look at the main cast, right, like the Tendi actress looks a lot like Tendi if you put her in green, right? The Mariner actress looks exactly like Mariner if you put her hair up, right? Same thing with Boimler and with Rutherford. They look like their characters quite a bit. The captain looks like her character a ton, right? But Tatasciore doesn't look like Shax because Shax is a Hulk, right? And Jerry O'Connell doesn't look at all like Ransom because Ransom lifts and O'Connell does not, it seems, right? Like, these are basic things. And the Tiana actress doesn't look at all like a cat. So, I mean, this is acting. It's acting.
Jerry's going to unfollow us on Twitter now.
I would think it'd be a little different if, of course, Fred Tatasciore, you don't know what he sounds like in real life. He's one of those character voices. But Jerry O'Connell, you've seen him in movies. You know him. He's recognizable face and voice. It just, because of that's the reason why it throws me off. Not when you have a Frank Welker who does like 11 million different voices and such. And I'm gonna. Yeah,
there's definitely some voice actors that like you can always tell it's them. Like Gray DeLille, I don't care what she does, but I know that that's Princess Azula. That is that's Azula all fucking right. I know it's her. But others, they're truly chameleons with their voice, and the role that they're playing changes what they sound like. I don't know. It's interesting to me. So the scene after that is us going into the. It's just. Boimler and Mariner doing work, moving crates. Like, that's just their shift. And, Mariner being Mariner decides that, let's get into some trouble. Let's sneak onto Starbase 25. And Boimler's offhand comment about, like, William is probably going to get to go to this thing, inspires her to a plan for how they're going to get onto it. She looks up where the Titan is, and they're on the other side of the system, deterring Packlets from interfering. So... she's going to go as a +1 to Boimler, pretending to be Will Boimler from the Titan.
The transporter duplicate Will Boimler.
And they're going to party crash. I love it. I love the idea of party crashing.
I like the idea that this Boimler is starting to stretch those rules a little bit. Like, last year, Boimler would be like, no, we're not invited. This isn't happening.
Right.
Now, there's a couple of different phrases that were used in the scene I thought were pretty interesting. So apparently slang for getting fucked up in the 24th century is getting torn. Interesting one. I don't think I've ever heard that one.
Wait, is that a reference to Kirk's shirt always getting torn when he gets into a fight?
It might be, and I think that if so, it's amazing.
You heard it here first.
Now, let me correct myself. It's not torn. The phrase I've heard is tore up.
Tore up I've heard, but torn is different. So then the other one was on a capital ship is what Mariner refers to serving on the Titan as.
Right.
If we look at like the typical like historical maritime definitions of a capital ships are just bigger ships with more guns. But from the recently released size reports, it looks like the California class is dramatically bigger than the Luna class. So maybe size is no longer an issue when it comes to being a capital ship or not. It's just a matter of duty. So that's an interesting bit there. And then
it may have to do. Sorry, I just wanted to interject. It may have to do with absolute tonnage. We know the Cerritos' lack of a worthy secondary hull there makes it a very light ship, whereas the Titan is quite compact and robust.
I'm going to circle back around to this subject at the very end, or on the scene where they actually arrive at Starbase 25, because I've got a small rant I want to go on about sizes. So
let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get back to that, I'm sure. And then the other thing that I thought was neat was even though Boimler might be loosening up a little bit, his first thought was still, let's call clone Boimler to make sure he understands that he's not, that I'm going to do this thing. And Mariner's like, what are you doing? And slaps the pad out of his hand, right? So maybe loosening up, but he's still naive as hell.
Well, it would be awkward if the Titan somehow did manage to arrive at the party, and here you are crashing the party, and you run into your transporter clone.
Or is he the transporter clone?
Oh yeah, if we get on that debate again.
Well, I think that we established for us that he was the transporter clone because the Boimler who remained behind, having to fight his way through all of those Packlets.
I don't know which one it was, though. I agree with you. Whichever was the one that fought through the Packlets is definitely the original, but we don't know which of the two that were in the next scene with them both is the one that fought through.
Well, and I say the one that fought through is the one who stayed behind because he realized in fighting through those Packlets that he had the guts to do what needed to get done.
I agree. That's definitely the original. That's the true Boimler, not the clone Boimler. But we don't know which one of them, of the two that was in the next scene, is the original in that case because we had a scene break there.
So wasn't that what you're saying? Was your theory was that the same thing that happened to Will Riker? The original Riker was the one that was left behind, and basically the Riker we know is a transporter clone.
Yep.
Basically.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, same even with Harry Kim that we have is a duplicate, right?
Boy.
There's a bunch of dupes around.
Oh boy! But I mean,
the Harry Kim in season 7 isn't the Harry Kim that we had from 1 through 6. So.
Well, didn't we lose Harry Kim in like season 2 with the Vidians?
Yeah, to like the Vidians. Yeah,
yes.
I remember that.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Yep.
But then also in Second Chances, they mentioned that the person who was beaming up Riker initiated a second confinement beam over the original, and the second resolved.
Yep.
So that's why I think that's why I'm saying that Riker is transporter clone.
I missed that part. The second one was the one that resolved, not the first. The first bounced. Okay.
So our next scene is moving back into the lounge where we've got Rutherford and Tendi assembling a model of the Cerritos. And it's like a full Tamika model kit where they're like pulling things off of sprues and like painting things and sticking things together. And it's got like a whole shields built into the model. It's got a warp core in there. It fires phasers. Like, I want one of these. This seems awesome to me.
Did you catch the name of the brand that made these?
No, I didn't. What was it?
Quark's brand.
Yeah,
so good.
Quarks.
And there's an interesting thing that happened today in the real world. Eaglemoss announced its USS Cerritos model.
Oh, okay.
So
timely. Nice cell-size one.
You remember back in the day in the golden age of Trek, around the 90s, late 80s, 90s, they had all these models. I mean, they had models for everything. I loved putting together the models and making those, and with painting them and all that. There was one summer, I can't remember, I was in middle school. I had a model of the Enterprise D, and I decided I'm going to be really OCD and dedicated on this one. Here's what I'm going to do. You know the little windows? Well, the model had all the little windows, right? I can't even count how many there were. There could have been 100, a few hundred, or whatever. So what I did was I took a toothpick and I would do like white, black, white, black, white, black. But it was like if there were 2 windows together, white. And then the next one, if it was 1, 2, or 3, black. So basically it was whatever the sets were. And that took probably a good week just of working on it on and off. But
I can imagine.
I mean,
awesome.
What was it? Toothpick or a thumbnail? It's something. Yeah. Now you want to talk about crazy.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of windows, man.
Those model kits are still out there. People still do them. There are whole communities that like are all about putting in fiber optic lights inside of them so they can control the lights and stuff. It's really neat stuff. Really cool. I wish I had the patience for it personally.
Yeah, I feel you there.
So we then see Rutherford talking about how he wants to make sure that the shields work, and he like peels up part of it and finds a note that he left himself. And we get the central part of this B plot, which is Rutherford's discomfort with not having memories for the last year, and he's afraid that he's not able to live up to himself from the previous year. That's like the central point of that B plot, and this introduces it to us by him just not being able to figure it out.
Because there's
you're right.
Boimler
It's
and Mariner on the
Yeah, yeah.
station, the Dupplers, and then them having this conversation around the Dupplers.
You're right. That's a C technically. Yeah.
Mhm.
It was so nice. It was so sweet though.
It was a good
It was
plot,
a
right?
really
Like,
nice plot.
yeah. But yeah, so they go through it. They start trying to figure out what his little note was, and the ship accidentally fires phasers at someone, and we hear a growl in the distance.
I think it hit
zapped the
Shax.
Zinti. I thought it hit the Zinti.
Oh right, because there was one right in that scene right before it.
I think it did.
Interesting
Yeah.
thing, Starbase 25 was first mentioned in the slaver weapon that introduced the Kazinti.
Oh. Another great reference.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a
But yeah,
really
so the last thing I wanted to mention was the model kit is so crazy specific that they actually have like a miniature Mariner and a miniature Boimler yelling at each other in the forward lounge. So yeah, they're awesome with this little mini.
Very freaking detailed.
Yep. So then we go back to the A plot, back to the bridge where they're arriving at Starbase 25. Okay, and we see his beautiful exterior shot of the Starbase, which is my background technically.
Yeah, the Starbase is beautiful.
I think it's based on a fan design actually, or something from like a beta canon thing.
It might be from one of the books, but it's,
I think so.
It's gorgeous.
Oh yeah, big fan. And we see a whole bunch of ships docked to it. And I'll go through that real quick. There's a pair of Andorian Kumari-looking ships. They're probably
Yep.
not the Kumaris themselves, but they look just like them.
Mhm.
You get 2 Parliament classes, which we've seen last season with the USS Vancouver. We see 2 Daedalus class starships, which are ancient, a good 300-year-old ship. And we see a singular Maquis Raider, could also be called a Judoi class. There's a couple different names for it, but it's
They used it a bit.
yeah, it's pretty small, but yeah. So that's what we've got in orbit of this starbase, which
Where's
is a
the-
huge starbase.
Where's the Daedalus?
The two
the
Daedalus ships are across from each other. So, there.
There's
Yeah,
one
lean down
which is
for me.
right-
Point
There's one right there.
Oh, all the way in the back.
and then
Okay,
there's
yeah.
one
down.
over here.
Yep, right
Oh,
down.
gotcha.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah.
People on the audio are going to be like, what's going on? So audio, if you want to check out our VOD on YouTube, we have backgrounds with some images, and we're actually thumbing through images as well, brought to you by
Cygnus
it's
X1.
John from Cygnus-X1.
Yep, that's right.
We really appreciate
Thank you, John.
it. He got these out on a Thursday. What a hero.
So neat thing though, and I didn't catch this when I watched the episode the first time, but in the next scene when they show the starbase from the inside of the bridge where it's on the view screen, there's an additional ship added, which I cannot identify. It might be a Luna class, but TBD. It's snuck in there between the Kumari and a Parliament class, which was previously an empty dock.
It very much
I
did.
couldn't place that one.
You think that's not a Nova
either.
class? The forward section of it looks a little sort of round, but then like horseshoe cut off there.
Maybe, but so here's what leads into my little rant that I mentioned before. Love Lower Decks, completely a great show, but they're terrible at scaling on stuff, right? Like,
Yes.
they don't make much sense with their scaling. The Parliament class here and then later in the episode is shown to be, sorry for Tuvik squeaks, the puppy gets energy. Anyways, the Parliament class is shown to be smaller than this California in this episode, but when we saw it the first time around, the Parliament dwarfed the California. So they're not very consistent there. The Andorian ships look massive, but they really shouldn't be because they were only slightly larger than the NX-01 Enterprise. So
Right.
I think
there's artistic liberty to it.
also here, this is a giant freaking space station, and that Maquis Raider should be like a shuttle in comparison
Yeah.
to that.
And the Daedaluses are 250-year-old like dinosaurs. Having them out anywhere is crazy to me.
Yeah, they shouldn't even really. Well, but hold on a minute. Maybe it's a Daedalus refit like Captain Crusher had in the future.
So the Olympic had a more robust secondary hull. I can't
Yeah, it had a
imagine the
different
lower
look to
decks
it.
animators would have overlooked that. But one thing to note, Renzo, one of those
The
Kumaris
Keto
has a tail
was
fin.
one of those. True. No, there's definitely some differences to the original Kumaris. That's why I said they're Kumari-ish.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
But even then, the size and the scale is what's kind of crazy. It's like the bird of prey scale. Sometimes it's 150 meters. Sometimes it's like 700 meters. Right.
And
Sort of
sometimes
same
it's
thing.
25.
And
Right.
sometimes
Tiny
you
little
can
fighter.
fit 2 humpback whales in it.
Exactly, right?
Right.
So like this is following in solid Trek tradition of not giving a fuck about scale. I'm just pointing out that they're not giving a fuck about scale. It's fine. That's a thing in Trek. We really are not good at consistency on it. But I'm just pointing out that they are not being consistent about it.
Maybe that's the point. It's a
Maybe
little
that is the
joke about
reference.
how inconsistent Star Trek is about scale.
So
Yeah, I
when
can't knock that.
Dag, when you put up that image in our Discord, the size comparison chart, and the Cerritos was not too much smaller than the Galaxy class.
Right?
That really surprised me a lot. Like I pictured the Cerritos being closer to maybe Miranda class size, maybe, well, I was about to say Nebula class, but the Nebula and the Galaxy share the same saucer design. So, but yeah, the Cerritos is definitely a lot bigger than I would have imagined.
It also
And you're
doesn't
right.
look bigger though. So if you look at the size of the windows that we see on it, and I'll bet you somebody on like Ex Astra Scientia is going to do this, or somebody at the Daystrom Institute website is going to do this. Someone's going to do this. You're going to take the miniature where you can see the Boimler and the Mariner in the front, and then from that determine the scale of the full ship. Somebody's going to do it. It's going to happen. It'll be on the
Yes.
it'll be on the Reddits if not.
Wow.
It will.
But it'll
Someone
be done
did the math.
for sure.
Wow.
But based on just the size of the windows that you see in the image that's on our Discord, that we'll probably splice in here just for the sake of the VOD viewers, the windows are just massive compared to those on the Enterprise D or the Galaxy class. So
Yep.
like it should be smaller. I think it should be close to a Miranda size, and I think that its duty and its mission profile fits better in a smaller ship, anyways. Like it's just
Well, and that's where I was thinking, like,
Questionable.
what if the excessive size, if we go with McMahon's confirmation that this is the size in the size chart, what if that excessive size is used for materials and like industrial replicators? Those are the size of a building. You know, if you're going into second contact in a world like Earth that's recovering from a disaster, like imagine the kind of infrastructure you're going to need to bring on your own to be able to help set up that recovery effect.
Well, see, I picture second contact being more formal and bureaucratic. Like, here are your membership forms. We got to take pictures for your photo ID. We've got to set up your phone number for communications on our, subspace relay, and that's kind of how I see second contact is more paperwork. When you get into the okay, now you're a member, you get to have some of our industrial replicators, et cetera, that's like third contact or something. That's I don't think that you're going to do all that on second contact.
I'm with Big J on this one. I also think that that's probably too much for just second contact. But here's the thing, though, Dag. If you need a replicator, just replicate with the replicators you have a bigger replicator in pieces, right? Like, make it up in steps. You can certainly go bigger. And we know that the Enterprise D has a huge evacuation capacity. We know that it's used for like planetary disasters multiple times throughout the show. So we know it's got to be prepped for it, right? And it's also traveling the galaxy while it's doing it. The Cerritos is smaller footprint, smaller areas, less urgent things, less racing to get to places. So yeah, for me, the scale on it, it's official, it's canon, it's what it is, but it just seems a little blown up for some reason.
Yeah.
Well, and definitely one of the things that surprised me was that it makes the Excelsior look like a little tug.
Right.
Mhm.
So, you know,
My God, that's a big ship.
not so big as our captain. We talked to this other captain of the station. He's got
So
some cool stuff on his back wall.
Captain Anderson, I believe was his name.
Mhm.
And he's got an Amelia Earhart on his background, like a couple other neat things.
I
A preserver artifact.
I looked up this round thing behind him. I don't know if you're looking at the same picture I am, but he's got off to the side behind his left hand, he's got like this plaque that looks like it's got an Amelia Earhart picture. And above it, there's a round thing, and it's got words on it. That is a parachute activator. I looked that up. It's old. It's like from the 30s or 40s, because the only pictures I could find were on like green canvas backpacks.
Hey, real quick. So this picture, Renzo, that you put in our Discord has the Cerritos looking a lot smaller
It's
than
fan
the
made.
other one.
It's
That's
just fan-made.
fan-made. Okay.
Yeah,
never
it says it
mind.
at the bottom right. I was just posting that at the
Oh.
I think it's the much more reasonable size for it. That's all.
That is. Okay. Sorry, sorry to keep going back on sizes.
Hey, I love that topic, but
Yeah.
anyways, but yeah, so his background, he's got the Amelia Earhart, the parachute activator. There's a small biplane, like a test pilot biplane, not like a World War I biplane. It looks like a preserver artifact above his left shoulder, I think.
I would say it's a preserver artifact, but there's a Starfleet Delta on it. So maybe it's a Starfleet, maybe it's a gold press Latinum preservator ornament, and it's just Delta branded because Quark has a licensing agreement.
Quark seems to own everything in this future.
There is a Quarks on his station.
True. So
he's like the McDonald's of the 24th century.
He's making
more
money.
like Disney. He owns everything.
Yeah.
So we go back to the bridge, and we've got Captain Freeman talking to Captain Anderson from Starbase 25. She says that they're here, they're ready to disembark and ready to get rid of the Duplers because they've been such a pain in the butt, essentially. I'm paraphrasing. However, as the captain on the Starbase notices and the rest of the crew notices, the Duplers wandered onto the bridge during this and overheard her saying it, and the Dupler ambassador begins to freak out.
And duplicates. And then it just spirals from there as he is increasingly embarrassed of the duplication and, of course, starts taking everybody's assurances the wrong way. Even though some of them are ingenuine when she turns around and is like, no, you're fine. I loved you.
Very ingenuine.
Yeah.
They've got this very defeatist personality, and I like how they go around the ship. Oh,
so sorry.
Yeah, so I wrote notes on that. Like, one of the themes here is, the insecurity that comes with embarrassment and overthinking.
Yep.
And that's definitely on, I would say, full parody display here.
Yeah, so there's a really good scene about that. Like a minute later from the beginning of this scene, where one of the 4 Dupler clones duplicates on its own without all the others, and then there are 5 of them, so they have an odd number for the first time or whatever. But like the other 3 point at the other 2 and are like, "Look, that one duplicated on his own," and that's more shame on it. It's like shaming each other, shaming yourself for having differing levels of shame about duplicating.
Makes you wonder what their culture's like at home that prevents this.
Maybe they're not ashamed of embarrassing themselves amongst their own kind.
Maybe.
Oh, yeah. Well, how do we know that doesn't? It's got to happen.
If it happens at home, they'd blow up their own planet.
Well, I don't want to give away the...
Yeah, that's what I was leaning towards.
So, yeah, remind me to come back around to that very question once we get to where I'm talking about. Okay.
But yeah, Richard Kind did a fantastic job just voicing himself, talking to other versions of himself at varying levels of shame. So delightful.
He probably has a record now for most lines in this episode. It's because he speaks for about 1,000 people.
It's a lot of lines.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So then our next scene is...
That's when the captain says, "You can't come aboard with all those duplers."
Fair. Yeah. The captain from the Starbase tells Freeman that she can't come aboard for the party. Essentially, that's her big concern until she gets the Dupler situation under control. And they seem like they're going to overwhelm the bridge very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
They're probably not going to have enough appetizers or drinks at the parties at the rate that those duplers are duplicating. And wouldn't this have been a good opportunity to have that, instead of captain, be a Commodore, since he's running a space station?
Cisco's a captain.
Right. Cisco's a captain, because the Commodore rank in Star Trek didn't really stick. I know we had some Commodores in TOS, but then when we got to TNG, DS9, and Voyager, I don't recall hearing at all any Commodores.
The next one we see is Commodore O.
Oh,
right.
Yeah,
Commodore O in Picard. So, yeah, if they were going to reintroduce the Commodore rank, I think that this would have been a good opportunity to do that instead of making him captain.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that because this is so close to Deep Space Nine's timeline, though, or it's running right into it, right? It's only a couple years after. Reintroducing Commodore now probably would have been a little bit early. So, but I'm with you. I'm down with Commodore being like the desk jockey guy who runs a starbase rank. That makes sense to me as like a pre-admiral kind of position.
Yep.
Well, I just thought the Commodore was the 1-star admiral. They'd be like the rear admiral or something.
Well, rear admiral's a rank. We have rear vice admiral, fleet admiral, and then that's it.
Right.
Yeah, rear admiral's its own thing.
We still just had that 1-star Commodore.
How about this? Instead of having a star, it's a black star instead of a gold star. Like if you were like a lieutenant junior grade rather than lieutenant. Then when you're a lieutenant / rear admiral, you get the full gold one with a square around it.
Captains look at you because you have to do more paperwork. Other admirals look at you because they shovel their paperwork at you. It's just a terrible job to have.
I mean, that's how it is in the real Navy too, right? Like the lowest level of admiral is like the shittiest role because they get the most of like the paperwork. They're paper pushers.
Yeah.
So.
Is the lowest of admiral the rear admiral or the vice admiral?
It's rear.
It's rear. Okay, gotcha.
Oh.
Because Kirk was vice admiral, so I mean he wasn't even
Kirk
really
had 4 stars.
admiral.
No, Kirk had 3, I thought, which I think was full admiral, and then Nagura was the 4.
Well,
but that's something I'd want to go back and look at.
I may be thinking about Kirk and the Kelvin timeline when he's going to take the promotion in Star Trek Beyond. I think that was about Vice Admiral, and I might have got them confused, thinking that once we saw Kirk in the motion picture that he was Vice Admiral, or maybe I read a book that said that. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe. All right, moving back to the plot of the episode. So next scene is Boimler and Mariner planning their caper, right? And they're discussing what they're going to wear to the party. And it looks like Boimler is down to wear skants. But Mariner quickly shuts down that idea.
They still have skants in the 2380s. I love it.
And then we get the alerting of the entire ship that the duplers are out of control, which only causes more shame to the duplers, and more duplication occurs. And that's when Mariner says, I think it's the best line of the entire episode. No one on the bridge is going to notice one little transporter override, with response to like why Boimler says, well, we can't go now.
They're not going to they're not going to notice them missing now. So
definitely not.
It's like this is the perfect time to sneak out of the house. Is when the oven's on fire. That's when you go, because the parents aren't paying attention to anything else. And I love the line that Mariner had in this scene about the scants. She's like, hell no, I'm not wearing a scan. I didn't put on underwear for nothing.
Yeah. So here's our commercial cut, and then we end up like they don't actually show us them going to the starbase, but we see them on the starbase beaming in, and they are in dress whites, a la Star Trek Nemesis style.
Oh yeah.
Which are very nice.
They're the lower decks variant of
but yeah,
basically what I'm wearing.
Yeah.
I love they got some cool stuff in this scene. There's a Delta Flyer variant flying out. There's a worker bee coming in with crates. There's those aliens that they met on the Envoy planet that like she stole his money from, and like that was just really good. I don't know why I'm laughing so hard about that, but it was cool to see some of those indigenous elements gain some continuity.
So one thing I wanted to point out was there's an episode of Voltron, the Legendary Defender, where they also take part on like a
Space
giant
Mall.
I love that Space Mall episode, but it takes place on like a giant mall, and this scene looks a lot like it. Like the look of it, the tiering on levels of things, really reminded me of the look of that episode, which is high praise in my.
I agree. The animation here I feel is a bit more busy, but yeah, I definitely that's probably the episode of Voltron, the Legendary Defender I've seen most often.
That's the new Voltron that's on Netflix, right?
Netflix, yep.
I watched that whole series. I don't remember them all. Maybe vaguely.
There was even a mall cop that chased them.
Yeah. Okay. It's coming to me.
Cool. So they wander around the mall. They are discussing that Mariner used to live there, which is another like interesting note that Boimler seems to just be like, oh, of course you did. So we continue this pattern of Mariner's been everywhere, seen everything, met everyone. And they walk past a Quarks, and Mariner is happy to see that they have a Quarks now.
because that used to be a place where teenagers used to get in trouble.
Well, to me, Mariner is kind of like the army brat, moving around station to station, base to base, has lived a little bit of everywhere.
No, she says she lived here. She didn't serve here too, though, right? So
That's
this might have been when she.
Right.
Oh, no, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I think she might have just been here as like a kid, been one of those kids that got into trouble.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Because she knew where the place was that they went to get in trouble.
Yep.
So there you go.
Yep. We see a ton of like other well-known alien races here. We see a bunch of Andorians. We see some Vulcans. We see
Bajorans.
like Ebolians, Bajorans, Benzites, all sorts of stuff. And then we see a Tellarite with a Klingon communicator who's reporting to somebody that he's seen Mariner.
Becky.
Becky, right.
Remember Becky Mariner? She's on the station. It's like, whoa. Whoa.
We then get... Oh, go ahead.
I loved trying to translate these signs. Like
yeah.
when they walk into her colleague's goods store, it says Malvis's Goods in the sign there.
So they walk into Malvis's, and Malvis is, I think, the first Mizarian that we've seen outside of the Mizarian episode of TNG.
Allegiance.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's the only time we've ever seen one outside of that episode.
Now, interesting thing to note here. I want to point out some cool stuff in this in this intro scene. We've got 3D chess. We've got some tricorders and some pads and what appear to be like old school 19 or 21st century 3D printers. We've got these cases full of tribbles. The favorite thing I like about this opening scene here when they walk in is they have Riker's really open shirt from Angel 1. It's even blue and shiny. That's great attention to detail right there.
Yeah, Malvis has some good stuff on his windows as well. He's got like an old Vulcan Lirpa. He's got a couple old phasers. He's got like a sword that looks Klingon.
There is a batleth in here, and if the image shows it, you'll actually see the original phaser rifle's rifle.
Oh, from TNG.
No,
or whatever?
from TOS. The
cage?
The big
okay.
blue rifle
Yeah.
that they were hulking around. That actually looked like, the 1950s sci-fi laser gun.
I mean, the gun that Malvis has even looks like a Varan T disruptor. I don't think it is one because it's got more ridges, but it looks kind of like them too.
I don't remember the hexagon opening for the Varan T. But
No, it was round on the Varan T, but it's very similar.
Aren't there only 5 of those?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a Varan U.
Maybe the upgraded model. But yeah, so we go through the scene a little bit, and Malvis says that he'll tell them where the party is, because that's what Mariner wants to find out, if they'll do one delivery run for him, and they'll call it even. Boimler immediately demands to know what's inside, and surprisingly, Malvis just shows them. They are data bath soaps, or bath foams of some kind. To which we get the great question, are you sure some of these aren't lore?
Yeah, some of them might be lores.
We get some cool planet references here. We get a reference to Becky leaving Malvis on CD Alpha 4, which is worse than CD Alpha 5. If you're familiar with CD Alpha 5, that was where one of the set pieces in the Wrath of Khan.
This is set the Alpha 5.
We learn that Becky... I'm just going to call her Becky from now on. I'm sorry. We learned that Becky has left Boimler on 2 planets, one of which is Rubicon 3, which is the planet featured in Justice, where Wesley broke a plant and got sentenced to death.
Right. Yeah, that was the 80s. That was.
I'm with Starfleet. Time. We don't lie. 3 years later, the first duty.
I'm just this one scene though does give us a good example of like the writers for this show definitely Googled or looked things up on Memory Alpha before just to be sure, because they could have easily said we dropped them on SETI Alpha 5, not SETI Alpha 6. Well, you can't drop them off on SETI Alpha 6; it's not there anymore, right? So they definitely went back and were like, okay, which one was Khan on? Which one he's supposed to be on? Let's go numbers lower than that, because those will still exist.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, if Mike McMahon is the head writer, he already knows these things.
fair, but I would still want to look it up.
2 planets in the habitable zone habitable zone of the star?
Of the SETI system?
Yeah. Well, I guess we've seen Stranger Things.
Looks like it now.
Yep.
Cool. So our next scene is a scene jump back to the lounge where we've got Rutherford and Tendi again working on the model of the Cerritos, and he seems to lose control of it for a second. Rutherford seems to lose control of it for a second, and it almost flies into their Zinti crewmates, and he grabs it at the last second. Again, we get another quick little cat-like "meow" kind of sound that I think is very appropriate. And he brings it back, and he's freaking out about the fact that he can't finish this model. To which Tendi tries to calm him down, like, "Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out." And then Shaq shows up to ruin their day with a
An embarrassment.
embarrassment of duplers.
And he
Duplers.
He came in looking like he was crowd surfing.
He was gonna throw the one dupler, I thought.
You know, this character looks a lot like the late 90s character, the Critic.
Oh, God. Wow.
Remember that animated
Yes.
series?
Oh, I have not heard that name in forever. Yeah, the Critic.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so they drop him off, and then they immediately start freaking out about the fact that, "Oh God, you don't want us here. Oh no, we're in the way. We're inconveniencing you." And bloop, 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 more duplers.
They bump into Boimler. "Oh no, I bumped into you." Bloop, 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 bloop.
And on the bridge, there's still a whole lot more insincere attempts to calm them down. The captain and the ensigns in the front trying to like stay out of their way and be like, "No, it's fine. We appreciate you here." And there are just more and more of them to the point that they're just being crushed against the walls. So, cut back.
You're right.
To,
This
go
is
ahead.
they're the worst part of a tribble. Whoever had the idea of doing duplers is a genius.
Good job. Yeah. And you don't have to wait at all. It's instant. It's some sort of like quantum duplication thing. It's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the
So we
matter
cut-
coming from?
Yeah. Well, maybe you don't want to know that.
Yeah, exactly.
So we cut to the next scene, which is Tendi and Rutherford back in a turbo lift trying to finish up the Cerrito. So it looks like it's got both nacelles done now. And here's where we can see that the box is from Quarks, which I
Yeah.
had missed before. Good call. Interesting, though, that Quarks even makes a model for a know-nothing ship like the Cerritos.
Well, but you know, back in the day, I did have a model of that Vulcan shuttle that delivered Spock to the Enterprise when the Enterprise broke down on the highway.
Mm-hmm.
So, model makers are not beyond making models of some of the more obscure things, and that was the first and last time that we saw that Vulcan shuttle.
That's
so,
true.
yeah.
So we get a bit
Besides-
more... Oh,
There's probably some kind of a market for, you know, people on the California class having a lot of downtime, so of course the business will cater to them.
yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, it's Quark, right? All he needs is a 3D printable model once of a California class, and then he can just like mass produce it. Here's their Cerritos, here's all the other ships, right? Like they've just got the whole line.
yeah.
Cool. All right, so they stop on the floor that they're trying to get off to, and the floor they arrive at is already flooded with duplers. So they have to like push and shove their way through them, freaking them out even more, causing more duplications until they get to a hallway that's a bit more open, and they try and run, essentially being chased by the slow oncoming wave of duplers.
And the funniest part, whenever any scenes with the duplers in it, you just hear, oh.
I'm sorry. Oh, my bad. Essentially.
You know, as a sound engineer, I probably would have just had him say like, oh, and then grab those 3 segments, split them up, and tune them, pin pitch them differently, and just insert them in places that
I
you
think
never had
that's
to
probably
say it
a-
again.
Probably
Might
exactly
be what they did.
happened.
Yeah. Okay, and then we break to a neat chase scene. Well, it's about to be a chase scene with the buggies inside of the Starbase's hangar. Mariner driving, Boimler playing with a data doll.
Mariner
Who
pissed off at Boimler.
Would you guys
Yeah.
have thought in a million years that we would have seen a car chase in Star Trek, a police chase?
I feel
I
like
mean-
we've had a few.
We've had one police chase in 2009 when that cop was chasing baby Kirk and his
Yeah.
stepdad's like ancient car.
Yep, there's one.
There was apparently one in Voyager with Tom Paris, but I don't remember that.
I don't recall that either. There's definitely that one in Nemesis where
In Voyager, the one on the underwater planet when he's in the Delta Flyer. 40 days and 40 nights or whatever.
Yeah, it's 40 days.
Okay.
I don't remember that episode super well.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
they were definitely being chased by cops essentially in that episode. But yeah, the thing I wanted to point out about this though was the design of both buggies, both the cop buggy and their buggy, is very reminiscent of the motorcycle that that Kirk uses in 2009 when he's signing up for Starfleet Academy. The detached wheel that kind of floats there. That's very much that same design. It also reminds me, just based on the lighting, a lot of Tron.
I got Rocket League.
Haven't played it.
Rocket League. Haven't played that in forever.
It's been a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't imagine I'd see a cop chase again, but I was really glad to see something like this. It was a lot of fun, especially when Mariner's like, we'll just say it later in this scene, but she's basically like, they can't drive with crap, and then they take off, and it consumes almost the entirety of the rest of their plot. This really well-driven police chase.
Yeah.
But she's ticked that Boimler gave away information about her when she always gives away information about Boimler.
In his defense, I feel like she is kind of a hypocrite when it comes to these sorts of things.
Yeah, I would say that's accurate.
She is. Absolutely. She can dish it out, but she can't take it.
Yeah.
One of those kind of people.
Yep. So when they're getting pulled over, you know, like Dag just said, the cops can't drive, so she decides to just try and gun it and race them around the whole station. And he realizes, and Mariner calls into Malvis to let him know that they've been pulled over, to make sure that the car that they're in hasn't been stolen. He confirms it's not, but the weapons hidden under the bubble baths, those are kind of a problem. They've got a bunch of Klingon disruptors there.
I like the callback to the Klingon disruptors and smuggling those. That design of Klingon disruptor, see, that was first introduced in Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, which is 2285, 86-ish. So the Klingons are dealing in 100-year-old disruptors. Like, I mean, that would be close to us still using muskets.
Let's be real here, though. The Klingons don't update things very often. Like, they've had a bird of prey design that basically has been unchanged since the 2280s all the way to Deep Space Nine. So, like,
I'm not going to lie. An American six-shooter is not much changed from, you know, in the look of it in the last 150 years. It may be made of more of parts that are more resistant to the kind of heats and pressures. It may be able to handle a better caliber bullet. You know, the stuff that goes into it is better quality, but the design aesthetic is largely the same.
Okay. Yeah.
Also,
So
how are the
why
fans going to
change
go
the-
gaga over it if they can't recognize the guns?
and I think the design is
Yeah.
very memorable too, right? Like, we saw it all throughout Deep Space Nine as well, and it's in various video games. Like, it's a good design.
Yeah.
You definitely know it when you see it. So
Right.
I get that. This show, if there's nothing else it does, it makes things very recognizable to the fans or even the casual fans. There's enough in there in all of this show for different levels of fans, and so I get it. You're going to show Klingon disruptors. That is right away. I think if they could have done that, or the Romulan disruptors are also somewhat recognizable, but I get why they went with the Klingon ones, because you're right, they've been using those forever. But just my observation.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Okay, so they peel out, they race away, and they drive through a couple different places. They clearly seem to drive through a casino, where they run
They're
through
playing Dabo at the
a
casino.
Dabo table. Yep. They go through a Boolean hair cuttery.
Mr.
where
Moss.
they're-
Yep.
We don't know if it's Mr. Motts, but that's the reference.
Well, we know in Stardust City that there's a Mr. Motts franchise there.
oh, was there?
So
missed-
this could
Yeah.
very well be a Mr. Motts.
Oh, I
Motts.
see. It could be a chain now. That's fair.
Mr.
Yeah.
Motts has a toupee store on Stardust City.
Are you going to say that the tailor next to it is a Garrick?
No, It's definitely a clothier of some kind that it was interesting. I just watched Encounter at Farpoint, so I'm looking at the bolts of fabric in the foreground going with the exact same cylindrical tubes that the bolts of fabric were featured on Farpoint Station when Crusher was looking through them.
Right. Shopping for fabric.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the name of the place that they seem to drive or burst out of is the Lucky Ferengi, I think.
Yep.
So that's a pretty cool one. And then they're back on the main promenade, back on the crowded streets, and racing around, driving right past people, causing many a disaster on their way. Almost hitting an Andorian, almost hitting another Benzite, and then almost hitting a person in a Captain Pike
breather
wheel
mobile,
machine. I don't know.
Mobile
Yeah,
thing.
mobile rebreather.
Yeah. The beep once for yes, twice for no.
And he beeped no as they drove past him.
I really want to know if that's one of the guys from Much Ado About Boimler who went to the farm.
There were a couple people in those there.
Right.
Maybe he finished up his time at the farm and is now free to return to business.
Yeah. I mean, he's wearing a First Contact era medical or science uniform.
Mm-hmm.
But he has glasses on. Maybe he's allergic to Red Nox 5.
He's like allergic, it's true. So I actually have an interesting little tidbit about that. So I went to a conference a couple weeks ago, and Penny Johnson-Gerald, who played Cassidy Yates in Deep Space Nine and plays the Doctor on The Orville, gave an interesting tidbit about her time in both shows, where she told us that one of the things that they wanted to make sure that people didn't do on set was, or when in filming scenes, was wear glasses unless they were told to. Because in the future, people don't wear glasses. It's a solved issue. It's a fixed issue. So if you were wearing glasses, there need to be some sort of like, your character is allowed to do so. You're not from this place. You're from a rebel place, whatever. But you couldn't just wear glasses. So this character might have a good justification for wearing glasses. Maybe whatever injured him that put him in the wheelchair in the first place also affected his vision.
Or it's the same thing as
Kirk. Rhett next,
Picard.
yeah.
Well, Picard being bald. Remember Gene, when asked about Patrick Stewart playing a bald captain, he said, well, in the 24th century, no one would care.
There's a difference though between wearing glasses that actually affects your vision, your ability to see, and like being bald though, right? Like one is... one is a bit different, right? Like one actually affects your ability to work. The other is just completely cosmetic.
Right.
Apparently there's a thunderstorm outside and I'm missing it. We have missed rain we haven't had any rain at all this year. So
are you serious? Really?
I'm totally like, it's been dry as bones.
That's California for you.
Yep. On fire.
Cool. So we work our way through the rest of that scene. It's just more of a chase scene. It is exactly what you expect. Last second dodges, last second turns, almost running into some Antedians and their pet, it looked like.
And the Antedians are like, we're not people. It's like, hey, those are the fish people. We're not people. I'm like, wait, what?
There was, I'm trying to remember who it was, but in second season of TNG, when we first saw that race, there were two of them. One of them was played by... I'm
You're
gonna
right.
have to look it
It's
up.
a famous person. You're right. I just don't remember who it is either. It's like it's not Iggy Pop.
Mick Fleetwood, I think.
It was Mick Fleetwood?
Unless that was the one from Schisms. But we can look that up while we get to this game.
You got it. It's Mick Fleetwood. No, you're right. Mick Fleetwood it was.
Oh, he was right. Okay.
Yep. Cool. So then they bust into a shuttle hangar. Looks like it's a bit more of a fancier shuttle hangar than the previous one. And they drive past a new Vulcan ship design, which I love. It is clearly based on the ones from Enterprise, but it is definitely a new design. It is neat. It has a coleoptical ring for its warp drive. Mm-hmm. And the Vulcans notice what's going on and go, fascinating, and just carry on with whatever the hell they were doing, which is the appropriate response to the shenanigans that go on because of the
normal Vulcan thing to do.
Yep. Anything else before we cut back to the Cerritos?
No,
I know
we haven't got to the
shenanigans,
yet.
And I swear
There's nobody
to God,
here to pistol with me.
The next guy that says shenanigans, I'll pistol with the next guy that says shenanigans. Hey, Farva. Okay, never mind.
I'll bet you somebody's also going to figure out the size of this Vulcan like Corvette or whatever based on the size of the buggies as they drive past it too. So I love the internet. All right, and then our next scene is a return back to the docking bay where Rutherford and Tendi are up against the Sequoia, which they're still again fixing back up after its most recent destruction, and the Duplers are closing in on them, getting closer and closer. And Tendi's trying to get him to just leave the model behind, just climb, and he drops it, then goes in fishing for it, and then they get on top of the Sequoia. And now they're trying to. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, man, he uses the warp core to eject that to use to pop open the latch, right? And this is what, only the second or third time in the history of Star Trek that the warp core ejection system worked. Yeah, was online and worked.
Yeah, I like the fact that it actually ejected from that secondary hull area.
Let's talk about how they got it to eject in the first place. They uncovered the whole saucer section. They go to the bridge area, and with tweezers, they each grab a separate key and then put them into like little things and turn the keys at the same time to get it to start a self-destruct.
Or when they're launching a nuclear missile, turn the keys. All right, one, two, click.
We'll have imagery of that when we get back from the aviary.
Right. So, anyways, we cut to the aviary, which is really, really cool. Mariner mentions that she thinks it's a great place to lose who's chasing them. And they race on through. It's clear that this is a part of a starbase. It's not a holodeck per se.
There's a hollow sky, but everything else here appears to be normal. There's even a guy here using McCoy's binoculars from Star Trek V, which I thought was a nice detail.
Mm-hmm. And there are a ton of these little round, like nest-looking homes that are hung up in the trees, some of which are occupied by alien races. Like they look like either Skor or Aurelians, but considering that they're on a Federation starbase, I'm going to guess they're Aurelians. There are also a whole bunch of Dodrios and Doduos out there. Like there are just tons of little creatures running around.
So it's safe to assume that a starbase would need to have long-term living areas for crew and family, right?
Crew, family, and civilians, I would think.
Right. Would it also be possible that that they would have holodecks be what they use for the quote-unquote living environment or houses or yards, instead of trying to have sections of the ship that are specialized, like throw some hay on the deck of the starbase? You're in a big holodeck, and that replicates and simulates the living conditions or living quarters that you would have on your home planet.
I don't think so, because so it's not impossible, right? But I don't think that they do it that way because of the energy requirements, because we know that holodecks are very energy intensive, right? Whereas to modify a quarters or a couple quarters for a specific alien race so that they can live in their home environment is probably a lot less effort.
There's probably a tier model that's affordable.
Yeah, I mean, so in the Titan novels, the Titan books, they actually deal with this quite a bit, because they have Melora Pazlar, the low alien race. She's an Alasian. She can't deal with normal gravity. Mm-hmm. Her quarters are at lower gravity. They have a Pacifican who lives in water. Her quarters are literally in water. When you walk inside, you walk through a force field into water. They have Kachaka Op, who's some kind of spider creature. I don't remember the name of her race, and her quarters are like a trapdoor spider's lair. Like, it's dark, there are no lights, the gravity there is higher than on the rest of the ship, etc. Now, could you have done this with a holodeck kind of situation? For sure, but it's not permanent. If the power goes out, what happens to the water around your person who can only breathe water?
Can you imagine?
Oh, damn.
Can you imagine the hell it would be to have an entirely holographic quarters where you have to worry about getting like upgrades to your sofa so that it can maintain, tensile strength? This one's only rated for 800 pounds.
Well, we know that they can do that because we know that in Picard, like the rooms that Picard was in was definitely all holographic, right?
The one on the La Sirena?
Yeah, the La Sirena had like a room for it. Now, I think of it as like a stateroom for like a visiting dignitary. Sure, make the whole thing a holodeck. That's fine. But like permanent long-term living, bit more of a stretch for me.
Well, for power requirements, it's a lot different on a starbase. They're going to have a whole lot more power than a starship, and the size of the holodeck probably wouldn't need to be any bigger than like a room that you or I or Dag is sitting in, because it's a holodeck. The way that it works is, as when you're walking, it's kind of a
Treadmill motion.
a treadmill effect. So if my holodeck is like, a bedroom size, you could still be able to simulate a much larger area. So you don't have to have a holodeck the size of the final resulting area that you want. They can be smaller.
That's fair. No,
compartmentalized.
no disagreement there, and that's definitely an advantage, but that's something that would be more advantageous on a starship with limited space versus this massive honking starbase, right? Like, it doesn't have as much space constraints, it seems, because the amounts of space spent on those multiple space malls.
Right? Yeah. They got enough room for this big mall.
Aviary?
And enough room for a car chase tap, and so I don't think they're hurting for size.
Yeah.
Move to the aviary, he said. It'll be fun, he said.
So did you get a guess? Did you think they were Aurelians, or did you think they were Score?
So when I looked them up, it's almost like the animated series doesn't have a strong distinction between Aurelians and Score, so one, the other, or both. But I know it was a Score. Wasn't it a Score that served in Starfleet?
No, it was an Aurelian.
Was that an
Score
Aurelian?
were the baddies. Yeah, the Score were the baddies.
Oh, well, maybe it's more of a nationalistic thing instead of a species thing.
Oh, that's fair. Might be.
Yeah.
So they almost run into Boothby, or a Boothby-like character.
I know,
who seems
totally-
very depressed.
Totally went Boothby there, too. Very nice.
He seemed very excited about the possibility of dying.
So this is how I die.
I'm still alive. He starts raking up more feathers.
And then they careen off into a lake, and there are no jokes about inflatable models or anything like that.
But even though the data floats.
All floats.
Yeah.
I was
That's,
But they
expecting.
didn't make the joke, at least.
Right, that's the insurrection joke. In the event of a water landing, I have been designed to function as a something.
Flotation device.
Thanks.
Yes, flotation device. I was totally ready for them to make that reference. It didn't happen.
I'm glad they didn't. I think it's a little forced.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious. And it doesn't really need to be
Yeah, they
hammered
didn't
in.
need to say it. It was there. Yeah. So
No.
then they get out of the water, soapy and sudsy, and Mariner calls Malvis again, yells at him a bit, and demands that, or threatens him and demands to know where the party is. He tells him it's in ballroom A.
Which is like, duh, the obvious place.
The first place you'd look.
Ballroom Alpha, yeah.
Alpha?
Well, why wouldn't
Now, this is
why
a
wouldn't they
freaking club.
know that? If it was such a big party, like, why wouldn't you just buy?
Why
It's a very big
wouldn't
station.
they indeed.
It's a very big station.
It's a big station, but still, there's going to be a directory, and if you look at ballrooms, party rooms, you're going to look at which one's the first one or the biggest, and this
Maybe they
process of
don't have it
elimination.
listed. Maybe they don't have it listed so that people won't, try and party crash.
An exclusive club. Okay.
Well, I mean, they even said it. Well, we'll get there, but they
right.
they have a bouncer.
Yeah. A bouncer from the animated series.
Of a race from the animated series, at least.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So
But
we
this
end
is
up,
a banging club atmosphere here.
yeah, we cut to the actual club where there's like a big old Welcome Starfleet sign and bunch of UFP banners all over, and
I want to point out the UFP banners here. I don't know if you're looking at them, but they're copied and pasted and mirrored. The star angle changes between the two of them. They're not the same direction.
ooh, good catch.
So
Shouldn't be that way.
They just did half a scene and then flipped it for the background.
Oh, good catch.
Well, the middle UFP banner is still correct, though.
Right, the middle sign
yeah.
is fine, but it's just those
Yeah.
two what we want to say, like, inactive elements in the background.
Good call. So we've got like a line of people checking in with the bouncer with their captain and their XO, their captain and their number one, each one of them. And they reach this bouncer who looks like an Asat from, again, TAS, continuing the trend of this show, recanonizing everything it can from TAS, which is great. Nasats are also a big deal in a whole bunch of the beta canon stuff. They're in a few of the novels. There was one that served along with Picard on one of his earlier ships on the Stargazer. Okay, so when they check in, they ask who he is and why he should be allowed in. He goes, Brett William Boymore after
Yeah,
a good elbow to the
slips
side.
up.
Yeah, a good elbow to the side, and then from the Titan, and then he's allowed in. He tries to see that Mariner is the +1, but she is not allowed in after the bouncer looks her up as being from the Cerritos, and Luna class and up only are allowed into the ship or into the party.
Burn.
Such a burn. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
she
not
says
on
that
the
she's
list.
from the Voyager D.
That was a little much. Why it could have been Voyager A. I mean, good lord.
Yeah, she skipped a bunch of
Only
letters
been
there.
2 years.
Right. They didn't cycle through that many Voyagers
Or
in
they
2
did.
years.
I hope not.
Yeah, so she gets cast aside.
Yep. And she's causing a bit of a commotion. Like people behind her in line are even getting frustrated with her too. A
Yeah.
whole bunch of captains and commanders just like looking upset at her.
Well, and we go back to that abandonment thing that she's been feeling since the first episode. That there's something underlying that still, I feel like. And I'd be interested to see. I feel like it's almost projection here. Like, she's mad at him for abandoning her, but that is exacerbating maybe an experience she had where she had to abandon somebody. And they keep talking about the Atlantis and how half the crew disappeared. And it's just an
I think we're going to
interesting
learn
thing
more.
there.
We're going to
so.
learn more about
You
the
remember
Atlantis.
Nagilum?
Yep.
Yes.
Nagilum promised to get rid of half of the Enterprise crew.
Well, like Thanos?
I just snap. Oop.
So hold on a second. How did Boimler even get in? Because it was captains and their first officers.
Because he is Luna class. He's masquerading as his clone from the Luna class.
Well, he's still only a lieutenant on that ship.
Right. It's
Junior grade of all things.
It's captains and first officers.
Well, but even Freeman tries to sneak in with 2 other people. An
Oh,
entourage.
okay. So if you're with your captain, they'd let you in. Maybe the assumption is that he's going to say that Riker's already inside, obviously.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
But yeah, so the Nassau bouncer tries to talk to Mariner after she has her argument with Boimler, try and comfort her, and she is not receptive at all.
No, she's not having it.
She's just pissed, which is reasonable. So yeah, so Boimler walks in and starts looking around, and here we get a couple more
Just
call
some
outs.
cool moments, man.
So the Okona is DJing.
He's missing an eye.
The outrageous Okona is DJing.
Yeah,
Okona.
Okana.
Okana.
But he's missing an eye for some reason.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's like in the books somehow.
It's got to.
But I know in the books he's an intelligence agent for Starfleet. So
Ooh. And he was the runner-up to play
Riker. Yeah, you're right.
in Next Generation.
So Boimler gets a drink from another Nassat, who is this time like a little maitre d' or a little waiter, and he notices Captain Shelby, now a captain with her XO, of a race that I think we saw in Discovery, right?
Kind of, but no. Jay, do you
What is
know?
this?
Do you know what that race is?
Isn't it? Okay, so my thought, I'm probably wrong, but my thought was the resemblance was to the, can't remember her name or her race, but was in Star Trek Beyond, the one that Kirk hid the doohickey in her head.
the claw. No,
Yeah.
that is not where this comes from. This
Okay.
is actually now canon. This species exists in Star Trek, but this was the original makeup for Saru.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's
really?
cool. Terrifying.
The anticipation was that Doug Jones would be wearing the appliance on the bottom of his face, and the top part would be CG. And the producers realized real quick that if Saru is in any scene at all, it's going to be intensive CG. So that's why
Yeah.
they went with prosthetics instead.
Okay.
So yeah, that was the original art.
Oh, it was
I
nice to
did
see
not-
Shelby again, because she looks
Yeah.
just like she did in TNG.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
very nice.
And she's had a hell of a career in the Star Trek beta canon, too. So,
the Frontier series with
yeah,
Peter
New
David.
Frontiers. Yep,
Right.
with Peter David.
Yeah, she was first officer on a ambassador class ship.
And then captain of it.
Yep.
And then captain of it. Yep.
Under Captain Mackenzie,
Right.
That Mackenzie Calhoun.
with the
Yep.
purple eyes.
who's this Anexian. Man, those books are so good.
Yeah.
Okay, and then he notices Captain Exley and his Exo, and notably, Exley is the small one on the shoulder, not the big person.
Oh,
I don't know what that's from, what that's supposed to be. No
nothing.
idea.
nothing. I've got nothing on that.
He's definitely got a full glass of wine there. Just why, but fine.
It's probably just something totally new. Like,
Maybe it'll come
why
back.
not? Yeah.
But yeah, so they go around the scene. You see a bunch of people there. He's not the only one below the rank of commander, but he's definitely like among the lowest pipped. So
Well, and he's the only one there in a Cerritos style dress uniform. Everybody else is wearing the post
Open,
DS9, exactly the one that I'm wearing, except with the white front, which is really interesting here. If you notice, everybody here, their dress uniform has a white front on it. But this was the commander's uniform. The commander's got the blue. A captain and the admirals got the white front, but everybody lower than a captain had to wear this sort of heather gray, sort of blue front panel. And also in this scene, next to Exler, behind another person, there's a Mystique. Somebody like the Exo of Titan.
you're right. Neat. She is there. Cool. All right. So we see Boimler looking kind of sad. He looks around. He doesn't really feel like he's there. So he kind of sets the tone for what's going to happen next for him. We get another outdoor shot of the Cerritos itself, and we just see the windows slowly turning purple, spreadingly purple, which reminds me a lot of that short trek with the Tribbles, where the ship is like
Yeah.
overwhelmed with them. But yeah, that's exactly what's going on here. It's just the ship is being overwhelmed by duplers again. So we cut to Rutherford and Tendi standing on top of the Sequoia. Rutherford continues to have a little bit of a panic, and here Tendi finally calms him down. He's panicking about the fact that he doesn't remember how to fix this ship or how to fix his little model, and he keeps thinking that maybe he's just not as good as an engineer as the old Rutherford was, and that he lost a year of being a friend with Tendi. And Tendi finally calms him down by saying, the reason you never finish these models is because you're not supposed to finish the models. It lets us have an excuse to spend time together.
Right. The point
Oh.
wasn't the making the model. The point was spending time and interacting with someone.
It's our social deflector dish.
Yeah.
Well, this scene in particular really hits home for me, right? Like, we all have to deal with a little bit of imposter syndrome at work, or when we're doing things that are like for work or we're under pressure, right? He's dealing with imposter syndrome. Am I the best Rutherford that I can be? Am I really Rutherford? Am I just trying? Am I acting in a role, kind of thing?
Right.
And Tendi does exactly what's necessary to help him out, right?
Yeah.
Gets him to release his tension, which is where we come to the scene that we talked about a minute ago, or a few minutes ago now, about how they use the warp drive of the miniature to open the latch, which had been welded shut last year.
Oh,
Do we ever find out why that latch was welded shut last year?
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's actually a reference to something we saw. I think it's just a
They use
throwaway.
these really wonderful like model tweezers to stick these cards into the little mini thing and do it and ejecting
I love
warp
that
core.
moment.
And it's a miniaturized computer voice. Ejecting warp core, 5 seconds.
I caught that. Yeah. Yeah. That was.
And she holds up the Cerritos just so that he can catch the warp core real quick too. Like, the whole thing is very well done. It
Yeah.
ejects out. It looks just like the one that we actually see in the engineering shots. It has that cool ring system above the warp core too.
And it was hot, so apparently it's generating something.
There's a scale moment here where that warp core looks a lot bigger than that
No disagreement. The
that
thickness, at
engineering
least.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe he's just standing closer.
Maybe. But yeah, so
Whoa.
that happens. He catches it. Tendi drops the miniature, and he chucks that warp core at the door. It explodes beautifully, and then the door just falls open. It doesn't damage it or anything. It just falls open.
Where's the OSHA for model kits here? Like, well, who lets anybody have a miniaturized antimatter reactor for their models?
I know, right?
Maybe it's not really a matter reactor. Maybe it's just like a battery that just explodes, or maybe I don't know. I don't know. Give me some time.
Battery
I'll think
that
of some
explodes.
rationalization.
on cue. Like, these models could be used as explosives in big enough quantity.
Yeah, they could.
Don't tell the TSA, but the batteries in these can be used as explosives too.
In the cell phones? Yeah.
That's why they don't let
Yeah.
us have water on planes.
Right. But yeah, so anyways, they managed to open the
Good
hatch,
point.
and Rutherford throws or helps Tendi jump up to it, and he hops up himself, and she pulls him up, and up they go up the long ladder.
Oh, good reference there.
Nice.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Murphs, if you're listening, we love you.
Yeah, so the duplers continue to replicate so quickly that like they almost catch up to the door. They seal the shut again, and you hear more duplers going, "Oh no, did we?
Oh.
Is this our fault? Why are they leaving us?"
Oh,
kind of stuff.
There's a Gorn, like, sous chef sitting outside here at Mr.
On a
Crottle
food stand. Yeah.
at the bar that they end up at on the station. So good.
They have food trucks. Well, not food trucks, but I mean, this is the things they had in the malls that were in between
little vending
where
booths.
the stores were. Yeah, like where you would buy your cell phone covers. Back in the day, you'd walk too close to one, they spray with perfume like mace. But how's this smell? Right in the eyes.
So we go inside the bar, and we see Mariner getting drinks from this purple alien of unknown species. And the alien's just or the bartender is just trying to make sure that she's making good choices, and Mariner avidly responds that I'm not here for good choices. So
There's a passed out Lurian in the background. Hi, Morn.
and Boimler shows up to apologize and sits down, and they settle down, they hash out their differences, they talk about it a little bit. They talk about, being friends and what it means to be each other's friends.
Mm-hmm.
Though in not so many words. And then they have a round together.
Well, I could have swore I saw a Lorian dive out of
There's
the
been a
way of the Jeep during
Yep,
the
you're right about that too.
the chase.
And that one looked a bit more like Morn with the padded outfit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There have been a few Lurians in this episode. Okay, anyways, so they go back to this, they shake hands, essentially. Like, they settle their differences. Like, they quash their beef. That's the phrasing I'll use. We come back to the bridge, and Ransom is climbing the walls. Captain Freeman is standing on top of her captain's chair because the duplers are still replicating, or duplicating. Shax is crowd surfing, and Freeman finally loses it and starts yelling at them. And by berating them and making them mad, they deduplicate and recombine.
They realize that if they're pissed, they gain focus instead of that embarrassed sort of insecurity.
Yeah. So she messages the crew, hails the crew, and tells them to talk bad to them, piss them off,
There's
berate them.
some really funny moments here. Your paw's weak. I don't know what you just said, but it didn't like the tone.
So we see a bunch of different areas. We see like sick bay where there are people climbing against the rafters. We see the engineers who are climbing up along the sides of the warp core. We see Ta'ana on the top of like a bio bed up against the roof.
Mhm.
And then they all start insulting the Dupler ambassadors, and the numbers just start slowly whittling down. Billups has a good yelling, not knowing this Treknobabble from that Treknobabble. Ta'ana is literally just bleep bleep you bleep 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 bleeps, which is great.
Oh, yeah, she cussed them the hell out.
It worked.
Yeah, it did.
And Freeman is also on the bridge getting them to deduplicate right there as well.
Do we ever figure out this guy's name?
No, they didn't give it, I think.
It's-
Nope.
It'll probably be in the show notes at some point, like in the post-episode notes, but they didn't give him a name.
So this was the part that I was starting to go to in the beginning of our review, was that I think, Renzo, you said that they didn't know that was how they recombine, which kind of goes counter to their planet. There
Right.
has to be some control of the duplicating, unless they're really good about.
Maybe
Culturally,
they
they
share a homeworld with the Zaldans, and the Zaldans always being rude and assholes to them. These guys are kept in check by Zaldans.
see, and I was just
Whoa.
thinking Yeah, I like your excuse better, but I was just thinking like maybe on their planet it's culturally appropriate to just not be walking on eggshells the whole time.
Okay.
But I like the Zaldans being there to keep these guys in check.
Yeah.
But so
Totally
realistically,
great.
right? Like to give a realistic answer, maybe they don't show shame when it's something that another one of their own kind says to them. Like it's just like, it's another dupler. I don't care what a dupler thinks. But when they're amongst non-duplers, they get like very self-conscious, which is what triggers the duplication.
They could have like an extreme off-world anxiety.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
that fits.
Yeah.
And as
I
far
like
as
it.
like the thing that doesn't make sense for me of this whole thing is that why didn't Starfleet know about this before, right? Like this is not first contact. They know that they duplicate. They want to set up like a trade deal. These guys clearly aren't like new, because even the Starbase administrator knew that once they start duplicating, things are going to go crazy. Why didn't Freeman know this from reading the
I thought Freeman said
documentation
it
on them?
at the beginning of the episode that like
She
they
says
Yeah.
that they duplicate when they are walking, when they're emotionally unsettled, but she doesn't say that if you make fun of them, they deduplicate.
it seems to be
right,
that
we
somehow
didn't
that
do
knowledge.
Yeah, they had half the story, but not the other half.
Yep.
Well, and again, maybe. Well,
Someone
Why
doesn't
wasn't
like
that?
someone
Why
doesn't
wasn't
like
that in their
Freeman
Yeah.
and just
Okay.
like did that.
It's just like it seems like it'd be one of those things that'd be in the briefing package, right? Like if you're in like the State Department and you're going to another country, they give you like 40 pages of stuff of like, here's what you shouldn't ever say, here's what you can do, here's where you
Right.
never want to go. Just like basic shit about the area or the city that you're going to, just to
Yeah.
learn, and you have to know it. Same thing here. You're working with the duplers for the first time. Well, okay, be super nice to them, but if you happen to lose control, mercilessly taunt them, make fun of them, belittle them, and berate, and then you'll get it back under control.
You're right. It would have been very hard with the kind of vetting process that the Federation has for first contact and continuing contact. I think it would be implausible to say that it was not until this moment that Freeman discovered when you berate them, cuss them out, talk down, that they recombine. I somehow don't
with you.
see that as being a missed detail.
Though to be fair, right? Had they known that from the beginning, we wouldn't have had an episode, right? Like this is like a
There we go. There, yeah.
this
there
is your
it
suspension of disbelief. Your suspension
Yep.
of disbelief is they didn't read that part of the briefing.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Cool. So we cut back to anyways, the situation around the Cerritos is back under control. The captain's ready to go back to her party. She's gonna get into that party. And then we cut back to Boimler and Mariner in the bar.
There is a moment where we see the Cerritos docked at this station, and she's freaking
Yes.
huge.
Yeah, she looks massive.
Yeah, she looks giant there. And
Granted,
I'm pretty
she's
sure
closer
tho-
to us.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure those
But-
are not. Well, okay. Somebody pointed out that those weren't precisely Luna or Parliament class ships. There are distinct differences between those that, they're not precise there. But
Come at me, bro. Those
could
look like
just be.
parliaments.
yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm like, yeah, it's close enough.
Yeah, and besides, it's a design that's unique to the show, right? Like the parliaments are from this show, so they're going to use them here and there.
Right.
Tuvix agrees. He's chomping on his toy. That's his way of saying, yeah.
I got Guinan vibes from this bartender. She
Yeah,
was just
with you
chill.
there.
Like not Guinan, but chill.
Yeah.
I got kind of more of a Quark vibe, like a bartender. Guinan was sort of
Therapist bartender.
right. Yes, Guinan was kind of a therapist bartender. Quark was like your Ted Danson's character in Cheers. What was the name of his character?
Nobody knows.
Yeah,
Cheers has
never
been
seen it.
gone. Cheers has been off the air for 30 years.
oh my
I've never seen it.
God. But yeah, that kind of bartender.
Okay.
But no, so we get this neat scene where they're both talking to the bartender, talking about how like they couldn't get into the party and how they're not going to be there for it, how they're going to miss out on it. And she very quickly goes, "Yeah, tons of Starfleeters get thrown out of that party. A lot of them miss that party. Who cares? Look, everybody's been tossed out of it." And she points down to the table where clearly somebody has etched their name into it, and it's Kirk plus Spock and a little Starfleet symbol from like back in history. And Boimler and Mariner collectively lose their shit about it, as makes sense.
We're at Kirk's bar. They call it this is Kirk's place, and isn't that bar known as the after party hangout?
So the neat thing that they mentioned though is that the bartender isn't just saying this from like, oh, the person who worked here before me told me about this. No, no, no. She was there. She remembers it. She remembers the blonde one and the other one, how they drank. So like, Mariner even clips that, lady, you're that old. You look amazing.
Yeah, she's
So,
like
like,
150.
At least. So yeah, it's very impressive. When Mariner and Boimler realize what's going on here, we get a good look at the bar at this point, but we're not going to cover everything there yet. That's coming later.
Yep. The speed round.
And then we cut to the Cerritos executive staff showing up at the event with an Asat bouncer, and Captain Freeman and her team are dressed to the nines, ready to go in. They are ready, and the bouncer won't let them in.
She's just not on the list.
Nope.
She tries to yell up the stairs to get the attention of the Captain Anderson, who I think intentionally quite ignores her, and the other captain doesn't hear her, and they're just left there. And she gives this speech about how she's not going to be deterred and they're going to get in there. And then the next scene cuts to them at just outside the bar, eating at the vendor.
Eating kebabs.
Looks like kebabs, yeah.
Mr. Krata Leg.
Got snubbed at the party. Go get something to eat.
Kebab sounds really good.
They look like
Kebabs
meatballs,
do
but yeah.
sound
Oh, I would love a kebab. Or shawarma. Oh, shawarma.
Oh, you guys got shawarmas? Nice.
Yeah, so anyways, we cut to them eating outside, and Mariner and Boimler realize that they're out there, and Mariner goes out to get her mom.
And they have a very highlight focus on that hand being offered and taken.
We see another scene with the Dupler ambassador where he thanks the Cerritos crew for their kindness in getting them here, and thanks for de-Duplarizing them. And Captain Freeman comes up with a very Mariner-esque idea as to what to do with the Duplers at that point, or very much like what Scotty did with the Tribbles, and they beam the Dupler ambassador right into the party, much the way that the Tribbles were beamed onto a Klingon D7.
Uh-huh.
And as soon as he's told this is by invitation only, oh no, and they Duplerite.
And
So
it
now
just
the real-
explodes.
Oh yeah, like you can see the numbers of them building up against the walls of the room too.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the real question: if the rest of Starfleet knows that to de-Dupler a Dupler, you have to insult them, that problem's not going to last very long. But if they don't know that, how long until they bump into Shelby and Shelby loses their shit at them, or some other captain who's gruff? Like, is Captain Pressman there? Is what was the one who was a real asshole, Riker?
Jellicoe?
Jellicoe. If Jellicoe's there, he'll lose his shit at them too. So,
Chances are, with the experience in that room, somebody knows something.
Well, Pressman was an admiral, and he's
also kicked out of Starfleet.
and
Yeah,
he's probably in
he's
jail.
probably
Yeah.
Yeah.
a penal
in prison.
colony somewhere.
yeah. No, I just couldn't think of Jellicoe's name. Pressman and Jellicoe look alike to me. So
Alright.
They look absolutely nothing alike.
One has hair, the other does not.
enough. Anyways, point is they
But it's
all
the
end up
21st
inside
century.
of this
Nobody
bar.
cares.
Right. They all end up inside this bar, including Rutherford and Tendi, where Tendi presents Rutherford with a new model to assemble because they lost the Cerritos in that disaster with the Duplers. They're going to build a Deep Space Nine, and he comes with a Jadzia and an Esri.
Yep. Little
Oh, and
figurines.
Miklimo is also in the background of this scene. So it looks like a lot of the crew from the Cerritos ended up in this bar.
You know what's funny? I had a DS9 model also when I was a kid.
I had
They had, yeah.
I had an Enterprise E model that I trashed because I couldn't. I was 14 and I didn't know how paint matching worked, and so I mixed a little bit of white and gray to make the outside hole for it. I didn't have enough, so I mixed some more white and gray, and I didn't get the mixture right, and so I just had this patchwork Enterprise E, and I didn't have really good patience at the time.
Yeah, the Enterprise. I didn't know they had an Enterprise E model kit, but on the Enterprise D, well, I think the D and the A, they had Enterprise A. You know how they would have that like the color chart, you know, in the paper it was like this spot is this color, this part's that color.
Yep.
So they had on the ship like all these different panels, because when you really take a good look at the Enterprise in the original series movies, the color of the ship is not uniform all the
Yeah,
way through.
it has what's called Aztecing. It's like a patterning on the hull.
Yes,
Mhm.
right. And the model had that too, and it's like, ain't nobody got time for that.
So I have a short model building story for you about that. When I was a real little tyke, I was like 9, maybe 10 years old. I got 2 model kits, 2 sets of kits as presents from a relative that was visiting the country. I got an
Mhm.
Enterprise D, which was really nice. It had like a full saucer separation. Everything was like 2 feet long, 2.5 feet long. It was big as hell. And I built that one with my mom. My mom is super precise for it. We mixed the paints. We painted the whole thing exactly the right color. We did the thing
Mhm.
with the toothpicks too for a lot of the windows, though not every one of them. We did the deflector in blue with different highlights and shit. We did the nacelle Bassard collectors in red. Everything was as close to perfect as we could get it. The only thing that was wrong was the paint that we used was a bit shinier, had like reflectiveness to it. In
Yeah.
retrospect, probably wrong, but I didn't care at the time. I was in love with it. And the other kit was the enemies of the Enterprise. It was a Romulan warbird, a Klingon bird of prey, and a Ferengi marauder. And I built that set of 3 with my dad. My dad has no patience for these things. He wanted to be supportive, and he wanted to make like to prove that my parents are divorced. He wanted to be like, oh, your mom built a kit. Well, we'll build this other kit. So I built it with my dad, and we did it with spray paint. The Ferengi Marauder was like a flat orange, no detail. The Romulan Warbird was a blue, almost turquoisey color, and the Bird of Prey was just flat green. Like, not even the right green. It was like a neon-y green. And those are my
Ew.
3. Yeah, it was ugly, but it was like just the difference of how each parent approached it was like my mom, slow, methodical, careful, took us several weeks to assemble. My dad, like, fuck it, we'll get this done this afternoon. We glued it all together perfectly, but the coloring, he didn't have the patience for.
So what you did was you pit the 2 parents against each other in a
people would end up dead.
competitive.
People would end up dead. No,
Not
it was
good.
just keep them apart kind of thing with my childhood.
Oh, gotcha.
The only time they came together was for Christmases, basically.
Oh,
So this episode wraps up with a really funny pun. At least I think so. When Freeman comes and talks about Mariner and Boimler, and earlier in the episode, Boimler had called Mariner his number 1, and now here Mariner calls Boimler her number 1, and Freeman says, "That's it now," and somebody says, "Well, you got to grow a beard."
Yeah.
yeah.
You're number 1 now. I was like, I love that. That's great.
But we do see that Mariner and Boimler carved their names into the table right next to where Kirk and Spock had carved theirs.
Yeah.
Very similarly. There are even rings of drinks still on top of things. And it was a good bonding moment in the end for both of them. We're seeing a lot of this like repeating theme of like 2 characters go off on an adventure and bond at the end of it. We saw it with Tendi and Mariner, right? We saw it with Rutherford and Boimler as well. So it's good. We're seeing like a lot of these classic Star Trek buddy adventure events.
I like that they're doing more of this pairing up the crew members for these different things. Now, I know that probably not every episode is going to have that, but it gives you more time to develop those characters and their relationships when they do pair them up.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope they keep continuing to do that. And I'll tell you what I really liked about this episode is how relatable it made things. It like we understand car chases, that's very relatable. The malls, the outdoor malls, the food stands, the party you've got to be on the list for with the bouncer that's looks like he could be doing anything else, but he has to be there. Crashing a party, all those things. So that's what I like about this episode, especially, is having things in there and having events. The model making. I mean, my God, the model making. Like this is stuff that you would think, well, why would you think that doesn't happen in the 24th century? There's such this kind of thought that we have that things that we have now, televisions, model kits, toys, collectibles, sports, hobbies, whatever it is, there's just this kind of impression that, well, this is all sanitized in the 24th century. You know, none of the stuff that would be recognizable to us is there. Now, granted, there may not be any of these things I'm talking about, but for this show, they put it in there. It's like, yeah, well, of course there's a police buggy with the same siren that you hear today. That hasn't changed in 300 years. And, you know, you've got your like strip mall shopping. Well, of course, you know, they may not have that in the 24th century, but it's something that we know and recognize. So, yeah, kudos for making this relatable.
One last thing I wanted to point out, just because it's the last scene of the episode and we're basically done with it. In the last shot, we see again the Cerritos docked at Starbase 25, but they've done one thing different, though. The windows that are right here where I'm pointing, right near that area, have all gone purple because the Dupplers are out of control still on the station.
Yep.
So they probably don't know the trick about just insult them to stop the Dupplerizing. And I think that that's a pretty funny, like, little cliffhanger-ish ending for the Starbase.
That's
Undoubtedly, what's
cool.
going to happen is somebody's going to hail Freeman and demand to know how they got it under control on her ship. But it
I'm
does,
not telling you, you're not on the list.
right? Exactly. She can play a little hardball for it. Oh, so next year you'll invite me if I save your Starbase, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Which
pretty
is
cool.
perfectly relatable too, I think. So yeah, but yeah, this show has done this. Like Star Trek in the last couple of years has done a good job of making more common everyday things relatable. Like they have movie nights on Enterprise and they have movie nights on Discovery. Like they're seeing movies on the holodeck. Like that all makes sense to me.
Yeah. Shall we talk about this bar for 60 seconds?
Yes.
I'll leave this to you, my good friend.
So, as we watch this episode, there are dozens of pictures on the wall of the bar, and I'm not going to go to any great length to map the references to where they are in this bar, but I am going to just list off all the pictures in this bar, as well as some of the relics and artifacts. Number one, most prominently, there's a Bajoran sailing ship photo right behind Mariner. Pretty awesome. There's a picture of Baylock. Mudd's women are featured. Morn, a Vulcan elder priestess. Maress, the M113 creature. There's a picture of Starship Voyager. Ruck from an episode of the original series that I can't remember the name of. There's a Horta. The bartender has a model of the Guardian of Forever on one of the shelves behind her. Loci is there. I had to look it up because I had to make sure the white side and the black side were on the right side for that picture to be taken. Apollo is there. The drill thralls from Triskelion are there. Locutus. There's a picture of freaking Locutus of Borg on this wall. The Telosians are there. There's those exosuits that they wore in the Tholian web, probably Spock's picture while they're like engaging with the interface.
Yeah.
I believe one of the shots was of the Aurora Pente Warden from Star Trek VI. And then there was also Eric's, the Adosian from the animated series. So these are all the things that I could figure out in the time that I had to see all of those things.
There's Sulu with the rapier.
Was that Sulu?
I think so. I can't think of anyone else who's holding a rapier threateningly.
I thought that was an
It would be
Andorian
Sulu.
for some reason. That's totally cool.
So there's also the machine, the Doomsday Machine. There's a Phoenix.
Right. Yeah, I wrote that down somewhere. I just didn't say it for some reason. Oh, there's also a picture of Spock with the Medusa visor. That red visor that he had to wear to look at the Medusa. That's there too. So
there's also a jukebox, which I think is the same one that Zephyr Cochrane kicks in First Contact.
No, yes. So if you're listening to this and you want to try to find those things, just pause it like a minute and a half ago and then open the bar scene and just press play and see if you can find all the things that we just mentioned.
It's a cool scene. Even the drinks that are behind the bartender lady are from episodes, right? Like they're specific weird ass glasses. Yep. I think one of them ones is the one that Spock and not Valkyris, Spock and the evil Vulcan in Star Trek VI.
Valeris,
that's the one. Spock and Valeris share a drink from. So they've got all sorts of stuff.
Those were, I think, the ones they actually shared the drinks from. Those were actually like candle holders that were appropriated for that, which makes sense.
It was like patchouli.
Candle
It looked
holders
like a
are weird.
patchouli thing. Yeah.
So that's the teardown of Lower Decks and Embarrassment of Duplers.
I quite liked the episode. I
So
thought it
much
was
stuff.
a blast. It's very much in theme for Lower Decks. I'm sure that Ex Accusentio is going to hate it. I thought it was fun.
Incredible.
Already told you what I thought about it.
Just when you think
Yeah.
they can't cram more nostalgia into a single episode. Yeah, that was solid. Very
Yeah.
solid, very solid. I'll give it 3,682,582,221 Duplers out of 10.
That's a lot of dupe. Where did you get that number?
I
No.
made it up
I
off
know
the
it.
top
I
of
know
my
it. I
head.
know it. I thought it was you were going to be.
The
it
number
was,
of tribbles from that episode? No.
No. The big container of that drug, season 1 TNG that the one part of the race was using to sell to the others.
So that
they were
was
keeping them
symbiosis.
addicted. Yeah.
I don't
Remember,
remember the
Data
number.
started counting like approximately 3 billion. He was guessing how many jujubes are in the jar or whatever, and he was. But you said okay, so you just made up that number.
I did just make up my number.
Okay, never mind.
So, Star Trek Day.
Right. So Star Trek Day was packed full of a whole bunch of fun things. There were retrospective panels with Harry Kim, with Garrett Wang, with George Takei. They covered every show this year, unlike last year where they definitely missed a couple. They
I thought they
covered
missed
even
TAS.
Enterprise. Counts if you cover TOS.
I suppose.
But yeah, so they were much more inclusive this year of covering all the shows, which is good because
Yeah.
we don't like anybody being left behind.
Sirach Lofton hosted a little DS9 thing,
DS9,
which is
yep.
cool.
But yeah, so it was a good time. We also saw a preview trailer for season 2 of Picard, which if you're trying to avoid spoilers, now would be another time to not listen to us
Yeah, because you just
Yeah.
listened to us spoil that whole episode.
without remembering to do our spoiler warning
Oh,
before
how do we keep forgetting that now?
because we don't have a script.
That's true. We record live.
I don't know how to feel about the
All those
right.
made up.
I don't know how to feel about the time travel aspect in Picard. I'm sure it's great. It's going to be fine. I don't know.
If they
It's
have
just-
to go back in time to the 21st century to stop Donald Trump from becoming president, I'm gonna be like, you hit it so hard on the nose, you broke the person's face.
So before anything else, I just want to point out that Dag is completely right. When we talked about this, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, he said that it was going to be like a contemporary time travel thing because of the LA highway system in one shot
Oh, yeah.
from the
Yeah.
poster. And I was like, no, they're not going to do that. No, I was dumb and wrong.
Yeah.
So totally right. That being said, I love time travel episodes. I particularly like time loop episodes the most, but time travel is great. The only time travel episode that I don't particularly love is Time's Arrow, which I know puts me in the minority, but I love
You're
time
fired.
travel eps. I know. I thought I thought the Samuel Clemens stuff was a
We
bit too
can
much.
do our breakdown of Time Zero another time.
Yeah. But
We
anyways,
don't have the
Yeah,
time.
okay, Deanna.
Thump.
You're
Yeah.
drunk.
But no, so I'm down with
No,
the
I'm not.
premise. It seems cool. I like the fact that we're gonna see not the mirror universe, but like another dark timeline. But the whole point of this is Q again teaching us a lesson, right? Like
Right.
the trial's never over, John Luke, right? Like this keeps going.
And remember what the trial was about was proving that we were beyond being a child savage race. And now
Yeah.
here we are in a universe that Q is like, you think you're so high and mighty, you think you're so great, you think you have surpassed all of these trials, but look, I'm going to make one tiny little change. And this is what happens. So if you can figure it out in 24 hours or 72 hours or whatever it is, then you can prove that you're a little bit further along. But always remember that you're one piece of hay away from being this.
Dag, it's one butterfly wing flap away
Right,
from being
right.
this.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, the butterfly effect.
Right.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think this is a great premise for a show. I think that, or like a season even.
I think
I'm
I have
looking
to
forward
take it. I think I have to take it in a vacuum. Is the way I have to look at this next season, and that's how I had to look at the last season. And I have had my qualms with the way Picard was done and how I felt it didn't do justice to a lot of the story arcs that really did come through there. But again, Jay, you asked earlier, like, when was the last time you thought you were going to see a police chase in Star Trek? And then we get this trailer, and I'm like, look at that, Raffi and Seven learning how to drive, running away from other cars.
I'm so excited for Raffi and Seven spending time together because that seems
Oh
delightful.
God, yes.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be very interesting, especially because Seven doesn't have her implants, and it looks like they used the Borg Queen as the gimmick to travel in time.
So let's theorize about that a little bit, right? Like this dark timeline that Picard was apparently a big muckety muck in, right? Like he's able to get access to the Borg Queen to time travel, right? Does that mean that in this future like the alternative Federation has captured and dismantled the Borg, right? Like,
well, remember,
what's going on?
I don't know. I mean, I can only theorize, but like if we assume that Best of Both Worlds happened a little bit differently, there was a queen on that cube, and maybe they captured her before she slungshot away on whatever it was that she slungshot off on.
Well, and then I did read a blurb. It might have been on, I think it was YouTube or somewhere, was that Q changed the history of the Borg, or at least the Federation's contact with the Borg. And I don't know if that's going to end up being true or what, but it would seem that whatever event in our present day turn the human race towards a more totalitarian, not so much mirror universe,
No, this
more
is heavily authoritarian, right?
Yeah.
Right. So
He's wearing a fascist outfit, right? Like he looks straight out of the SS in that scene with like the crosshash and all. Like it's very on the nose. Like it's not subtle.
So you're going to approach space travel with that in mind, not so much exploration, but probably occupation, like how we do things now with getting resources. You know, we're constantly empire building. We're constantly invading these smaller countries, black and brown countries that we're there for the resources, or something like that. And I think when the Borg come across humans in that state, they're more of a we're prepared at all times to kick someone's ass kind of thing than the happy-go-lucky.
I am curious why they had to use the Borg Queen as their shtick for time travel anyways. Like, they could just do stellar slingshots and such.
Maybe they don't know about those things anymore. Remember,
maybe
the stellar slingshot thing has kind of been retconned. That information was Spock's. Spock only knew about that because of the Section 31 time travel-y stuff. That's how he knew how to do the calculations correctly, and why really they had to rely on him to do those calculations when they did that, and they only did that twice.
Even if he had to make a best guess, 4 times.
Right. So that, if this Federation, if this, whatever this empire is, no longer had the discovery moment or a Spock, then slingshotting around the sun is not unknown. It's unknown stuff. But here's an interesting question. If they go back to like present day, 2022, whenever it comes out, there's a young Zephram Cochrane walking around down there.
Say what?
True.
Oh yeah,
there's
you're
a
right.
young Zephram Cochrane out there.
It's 2021. It's 30 years or 40 years until first contact. There's a young Zephram Cochrane, like 10, maybe 12, 15, a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what happens. Maybe there's an accident or something and he gets hit by a bus and they got to prevent it. Maybe it's like a Edith Keeler, but in reverse. They have to save him from time.
I hope that's not it, because we already
did our City on the Edge of Forever.
Well, not only that, but we already did our first contact, where Zephram Cochrane was this close to not launching his ship.
It's true.
The Phoenix.
It's
so true. I don't think I would go for another.
Also, then you have to explain then when first contact happens in this universe, how come Zephyr Cochrane doesn't remember Picard from his youth, right?
Yeah.
As if you remember every person you've ever run into when you were 12 years old.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were.
You just have to be the critical thinker in the group, Renzo.
I know.
Someone
Renzo.
has to. Someone.
Damn right.
So that's our exciting thing for season 2 Picard. There were some interesting casting revelations for Strange New Worlds.
Yep. So we're getting the return of 3 canon characters in addition to Pike, Spock, and Number 1. We're getting Cadet Uhura, Dr. Chapel, or Nurse Chapel, Musqueezy, and Dr. Mabenga from the original series, which means you're actually going to get your first canon interaction between Christine and Una.
Oh, yeah. And they should have like a crisis of identity because they were both played by Majel Barrett and have them like switch.
I gotta tell you,
they're
I think that would be
duplicates.
the funniest thing. No, like imagine the scene where it is literally just the actress just acting against herself, one in a really bad like blonde wig and the other one with the black hair. Like that would have been great, but obviously not gonna happen.
No.
But here's. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dak.
Oh, I was just gonna go with the rest of the casting info.
Oh yeah, go.
I wanted to give that to Renzo about is it the 2 or 3 like really new casts.
So we've got 3 new casts. The 2 that I find particularly interesting was you got a Starfleet character whose name is Hemmer, who is an Anar, and he shows the blindness of the Anar with the milky white eyes, right? The interesting thing, though, is that the actor who's portraying him is also a visually impaired actor. So they have gone legit. If they wanted a blind character, they got a blind actor for it. Very cool. The actor is actually an artist, too, so he's got stuff on the internet if you want to look him up. The other interesting casting is they've got a new character whose last name, and her name is Leon Noonien Singh, so a descendant of good old Khan. So I'm wondering how that's all going to go.
Wow, like great granddaughter. That's going to be awesome.
So there is one more castmate. I can't remember her name. Renzo, did you get that?
I'm looking it up now because I didn't want to leave it out. Give me just a sec.
Yeah, I feel bad because I think it's actually pretty significant. Maybe you can correct me. But I think this is the first human, like full human Latinx representation.
Maybe. I'm not sure. Erica Ortegas is the name of the new character, played by Melissa Navia.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if she's the first main Hispanic character. She very well might be. We've definitely had other actors who are Hispanic playing in roles. But even Captain Esteban, right, is supposed to be Hispanic.
Right. Well, Belana Torres probably can infer, but also they didn't explore her Latinx route. They explored the Klingon side. So I know that the character that became Tasha Yar was supposed to be Macha Hernandez.
Yep.
Yes.
But that never came to fruition. So I feel like this may be pretty cool.
Yeah, it'll be something neat to have for sure. Like I said, there's definitely absolutely. There's definitely been other characters who show either Latin or Hispanic naming convention, like JT Esteban. Esteban is a very Hispanic last name, right? And that was the captain of the Grissom from Star Trek 3. Even if the actor isn't particularly outwardly appearing to be Latin or Latinx or Hispanic in any way, but besides the point. But yeah, so it's good to have a character that's going to be additional representation, right? Like this casting revelation just shows us that they care a lot about proper representation, which is great.
Well, same thing happened with Martin Sheen because he I'm trying to I know his real last name is Estevez, his first name I forget, but I know.
I guess that's
Charlie Sheen. He's Carlos Estevez.
It's Emilio Estevez. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying there.
I think it's a stage name.
He would go for these roles that were calling for Hispanic actors, and they'd see him walk in and be like, "Oh, yeah, no, you don't look."
Ramon Antonio Gerardo Esteves.
That's right, Ramon.
But yeah, the other cool thing is the actor who's playing Dr. Mbenga is actually from Nigeria too, so he has like a bit of a good connection to it there. The original actor was not. The original actor is Booker Bradshaw, who was very much American, but he was from like Richmond, Virginia. So, but yeah, it's neat that
I
they've
like
got
how you're
this,
just like, yeah, Richmond, Virginia, like it's right over there.
It's an hour that way for me, but two maybe. But yeah, so they've got like a good diversity to it. They also, and this is I think a new bit of news, they gave us the full name for number one. They gave us her last name, Una Chin-Riley. So
cool.
Not sure how to feel about taking this mysteriously named character and just flushing it. Like, here we go, we're gonna flesh it all out.
Let's think about this in the long term. It took Star Trek 55 years to greenlight the pilot.
Yeah.
that's a great way to take it.
For those of you listening, everybody's accepted The Cage as the first episode of Star Trek, except The Cage wasn't aired on television until the late 80s. Nobody saw that episode unless you saw it cut up in The Menagerie, the two-part episode, the only two-part episode of the original series.
Yeah.
So that has to be taken in context when people are talking about, no, it was established in The Cage. Okay, well, that was when it was after TNG was already on.
They showed that it was because there was such a delay, excuse me, in the start of season 2 of TNG because of the writer's strike. There was this show. I remember the show they had that was kind of a filler thing where they showed The Cage for the first time ever, but it was like a behind the scenes
Menagerie
kind of show. No, I'm talking about this thing that they did before the second season of Next Generation started.
Oh, okay.
They Paramount put out some kind of, it was like a filler promotional show. I believe it was narrated by Patrick Stewart.
I remember that. Yeah, I do remember that.
It was in fall of '88. And because they had kind of like, here, we're going to put out something because, or for whatever. But
all of '88, you say? Huh. I was like a year and a couple months old.
Jesus Christ.
But no, so we
do
get
this.
I have to remind you every now and then. But no, so that was an interesting setup for what we're getting there. I'm glad that we're going to explore Strange New Worlds. Sign me up. Seems great. What's next? Oh, the Lower Decks mid-season trailer came out yesterday as well on Star Trek Day.
I didn't watch it.
I didn't watch it.
Okay. I'm just going to say it looks fun. There's a giant scorpion.
I absolutely agree that it's probably going to be great, but I'm like, I'm already mid-season. I don't need to see that. I look forward to this. It gets me out of bed.
Are you guys ready for my gripe yet about these Star
Prodigy?
Trek shows that I was talking about?
No. There's still another trailer.
Yeah, Prodigy.
Oh, sorry.
And then dates.
Yeah. So Prodigy gets its own like official serious trailer. We see the kiddos, which is all I can name them at the moment. The kiddos boarding the Protostar, accidentally turning on the Janeway hologram, and the Janeway hologram being like, "It seems like you guys need some help." And at the end, she starts like the whole trailer is just them showing them taking off of the Protostar, escaping whatever situation they were in, breaking into the ship, figuring it out.
Push the pew pew button. It doesn't have a pew pew button. Just push all of them until the weapons fire.
We have phasers, yes. So yeah, it seems like it's going to be a ton of fun. At the end of the episode, or at the end of the trailer, though, we do get a very proud-looking hologram Janeway telling them that she's seen a lot of ragtag crews in her day, and this one looks like it's going to become quite a family kind of thing. So, good time there.
Yep. Now...
So, dates. Do you still have them, or do you want to put me to grab it?
No, just name them.
Okay, so we've got... the rest of Lower Decks is going to run through another 5 weeks from today, roughly. So we should see the end of that in October 8th.
Mm-hmm.
or October 7th, technically. Prodigy season 1 starts October 28th, so we've got 2 weeks or so, or 3 weeks or so between those. Discovery season 4 premieres November 18th, and then we got Picard in February. So for the first time, you can say it.
No, you can go ahead and say it.
Okay. So for the first time in 20 years, we'll have 2 Star Trek shows running at the same time. And to me, that sounds like delightful success that Star Trek is back. Star Trek is big again.
Big mistake.
That's a good segue.
They're targeting different audiences, Big J. They're not going to be for the same people.
They learn nothing from the 90s, because the mistake that they made then and they're about to walk into right now is when you get overconfident about Star Trek. Star Trek is back. It starts getting the viewers, the ratings, et cetera, and then you start churning out these overlapping series, and then you get that franchise fatigue because you had the last couple seasons of TNG with the first couple seasons of DS9. You had the last 2 or 3 seasons of DS9 concurrent with the first couple or so seasons of Voyager, and they're going to walk right into that same issue. They've gotten overconfident about Trek. They're going to start doing these things concurrently, and they're going to hit that franchise fatigue at the wrong time. Is just when Star Trek is starting to go up that hill of being popular now. Well,
is it
popular?
Do we even know?
Yeah, they're going to be running. I saw it on a Facebook group that I'm in. They are going to be running some of these series concurrently. And
that's not what I'm saying. Do we know? I'm saying we don't know what the numbers of viewership are like, because they're only running these shows on Paramount Plus on TV. We don't know how many people are watching. There's no Nielsen ratings for these shows. We have no clue. The only things that we know as far as information are what the networks decide to tell us, or what they greenlight. The fact that they greenlit season 3 of Picard already means that Picard season 1's numbers are probably pretty damn good. 2 extra seasons after 1. Cool. On this case, I think that they've learned their lesson from the 90s, because they're not targeting the same viewers. The people who are going to watch Prodigy, it's meant for kids. It's not like Lower Decks. It's not like an adult cartoon. No, it's a kid show. It's supposed to be competing with something like Avatar: The Last Airbenders, like series of shows that are coming out soon for them, right? It's not against the same competition. Discovery season 4 is competing against primetime TV. That's what it's going for. Weekly releases for it, right? It's a different audience, right? Unlike with Voyager and DS9, which even though they didn't overlap, like storyline wise, it was 7 p.m. on UPN, you got DS9, 8 p.m. on UPN, you got Voyager, one after the other. So 2 solid hours of both.
You're really lucky.
Right?
The affiliate for me was CBS for DS9. They played that Sundays at 4 p.m. and Monday at 8 was Voyager on UPN. So we had 2 different stations for those.
That's unfortunate. No, I had them one back-to-back on UPN.
As soon as I read that in that group, I just said, "Oh no, don't do that."
I think we should be more closely comparing this to the way Marvel's doing things right now, where they have limited shows. They sometimes overlap, but it's not like a ton, right? Like they'll have a movie that comes out and then they'll have a show that's still going on all the time, right? Like Shang-Chi is in theaters right now, and it's amazing. But they also have the What If show going. They just finished the Winter Soldier and Falcon. Before that, they just had WandaVision. Right? Like they have a density of things going on that are for different audiences, really.
I want to preface this and be like, we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm sure we'll see what happens. I'm kind of in Renzo's boat, though, with the nature of fandom has completely mutated since Voyager went off the air.
And the number of episodes.
We're rapidly waiting to consume this information.
We're also not the average viewer of either show either.
No, we're not. And the circles that I frequent are pretty rabid. And so I'm fine. I would be... Go ahead.
I was going to say, here's my main concern. What the hell are the weekly podcasters going to do now when there's 2 episodes of Trek that happen? What does that look like?
It depends on who's interested in covering it, right? Like if you want to do Prodigy, you're welcome to do Prodigy, right? But if you as a podcaster don't find Prodigy to be interesting, it's like you get the first 2 episodes and you're like, it's for kids, not for me. Just stick to doing the coverage on Discovery. That kind of thing.
What are we gonna do though?
That's
Okay.
I figure we just have to like truncate our synopses and go for here are the themes of this episode and the characters that stand out, and here's some references.
Well, it would also depend on which days they air, right? Like if Discovery's on Thursdays, but like Prodigy's on Saturday mornings, and that also complicates things.
It do.
Well, I think I like Renzo's idea. It may just have to be that, well, Prodigy is directed towards kids. Kids aren't listening to our podcast, so fuck it.
Nah,
You know,
but our people are watching Prodigy.
I'm still gonna watch it.
I guess we got plenty of time.
I'm so gonna watch it.
We're gonna have to come up with a plan because
Yeah.
honestly, that was the second thing. Like as soon as I saw that, the first thing was, oh my god, they're about to screw the pooch and do what they did in the 90s. And then the second one was, what the hell are we gonna do with these weekly reviews? Like have
Hey, if we
2
want
separate ones, or
Hey, if any of the viewers have any ideas for what we can do for this, like any suggestions or any thoughts, you guys let us know.
drop them
Put
in
it
the
in the
comments.
comments.
Hit
Please.
us up on Twitter.
help us.
Yep, all the things.
All right.
This has
Did
been.
we have anything else we wanted to cover? I think we're covered on the Star Trek Day stuff.
Yay.
Right? No, God knows. It's 2 a.m. here. Like I
Yeah,
need to.
we're good.
I've got to work in the morning.
Hey, everybody. We really appreciate if you made it this far into the episode. Remember to keep going boldly beyond, or to keep going boldly with Beyond Trek.
Hold on a minute.
Podcast.
Hold on. We got to thank some people and do our social media. I even had it ready this time beforehand. Don't cheat me out of this.
Okay.
The first time I was prepared.
No, this is important.
So we're on patreon.com/Beyond Trek, twitter.com/Beyond Trek Pod, or at Beyond Trek Pod, and Twitter is Dags World, doing a lot of great stuff for us there. Facebook.com/Beyond Trek Podcast. Same with Instagram.com/Beyond Trek Podcast. And special thanks to our contributors, Stephanie Baker on Patreon and Anchor, S. Tam on Patreon, Anne Marie on Patreon as well, and Jim Cook on Anchor. And a special thank you to John from Cygnus-X1.net for the screen captures. I really like to think that he saw last week's episode and realized, okay, now they're recording this on Thursday. They don't have the screen caps, so maybe I need to haul ass and do that for those guys. So
In that case, also a special thanks to the people who write Memory Alpha, because the Memory Alpha page for the Embarrassment of Dupplers was done early for us today too, which is a nice handy thing to refer back to as you're doing an episode review.
Really nice.
yeah,
They did not. They spared no expense.
It didn't feel like Jurassic Park.
Okay, so
All right.
now we're going to go into our segment about the Matrix, right?
No.
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your ears. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.